Welcome, one and all, to the Intellectual Freedom Podcast. And I am so glad you are joining me today. I am Dr. David Hopkins, humanities professor, your host and guide as we explore everything: culture, society, politics, the messy middle of things going on in our world today as we try and decipher all that goes on around us. And anyway, as many of you know, we are going deep into the book Amusing Ourselves to Death, an epic book by Neil Postman. And we're moving through, we're about the halfway point by now, getting into some of the juiciest parts of the book with the deepest meaning. But even if you're just finding this for the first time and you haven't read the book, no worries at all. Each episode designed intentionally to stand alone, so you'll get something out of it. But if you're reading along, the hope is this provides an additional layer of depth and a new angle to consider Postman's work. But enough of the introductory stuff. Let's go ahead and get going. Flip on the news, swipe your feed, run to the kitchen just to get a snack. Heck, even blink too long and that story's gone. The broadcast has moved on to the next urgent or breaking news of the day without any time to ponder beyond, damn, that is terrible, or oh, how sad, or ha ha ha, look at that funny little viral cat TikTok video. A war headline, a celebrity breakup, a 30-second scandal that evaporates before the next commercial break because, of course, between 30 dead people in a drone attack in the Ukraine and a DC riot protesting this, that, or the other is a Burger King commercial. Neil Postman called this the peekaboo world, a world that he wrote, quote, where now this event, now that, pops into view for a moment and then vanishes again. A world without much coherence or sense, end quote. And surely, most definitely, nothing you can actually do about whatever that event is, but except for maybe rage at it or cheer it on. This is what Postman stops warning people and starts revealing the cost of culture that remembers nothing, but yet can react to everything on the fly. There was a time when public life in America was built on words, paragraphs, arguments, a much longer attention span. I love this example. In 1858, Abraham Lincoln stepped on the stage to debate Stephen Douglas for 7 hours. 7 hours. People stood outside for an entire afternoon listening to men argue clause by clause, argument by argument, line by line. And they didn't just endure it, they understood it. Heck, there was even a point that the two debaters told the audience, hey, we're not done yet. How about you go home, get some dinner, and come back and we'll pick it up where we left off. And here's the crazy thing. The people actually agreed to it and they all came back. I just find that story so completely incomprehensible to my mind, to our modern mind. Heck, we can't even pay attention to a 30-second commercial or read an article past the headline and maybe the first paragraph or first few sentences. And these people were so hungry and interested for long-form debate. I mean, our generation can't even stay focused for a Joe Rogan 3.5-hour podcast, which seems absurdly long compared to the long debates of a few generations ago. So how in the world could they do it when most of us would consider listening to a 7-hour political debate to be one of the deepest and darkest forms of torture known to mankind? Oh, and I did mention this wasn't even a presidential debate. It was it was a debate before Lincoln had really gained fame, had become the president, and probably it was for some Illinois political position. I don't even know what it was for, but how in the world did these people do that? How could they listen to a political debate for 7 hours and actually enjoy it and want more of it? They lived inside language. Their minds were wired differently than ours. I often wondered what the average intelligent person would think if we would bring them back today and they would try to converse with us 21st century schizoid brained Americans that we are. I mean, now that would be a made for TV movie, to grab someone from that time frame and have them sit down and just try and have a conversation with someone from today. But Postman wrote this, quote, "In a print culture, intelligence implies that one can dwell comfortably without pictures in a field of concepts and generalizations." Print culture, it trained the brain for sequence and patience. Reading demands logic, context, delayed conclusion. You actually have to earn the meaning over time. Compare that to today. If a video lasts more than 20 seconds, we're already hovering over next. The typographic mind lived in paragraphs. The digital mind lives in push notifications. Well, you and I we're being trained to be superficial. Our mediums of communication are not built to make us deep thinkers. So we shouldn't be stunned that the depth of debate, depth of analysis, depth of understanding by so many is pretty shallow. Kind of shallow, like a baby pool at a public swimming pool. Postman reminds us that a print-based civilization produced citizens, not consumers, because reading trains us to reason, spectacle trains us to react. So when did all of this change? What's the pivot point? As we talked about in the last episode, our technologies, they define in so many ways how we communicate, which in turn impacts our culture on pretty much every single level. So Postman marked the turning point at the invention of the telegraph and the photograph. The telegraph invented in the 1830s, and then just a decade later in the 1840s, the photograph was developed. This is the pivot according to Postman. Now, again, let's not over dramatize things. It wasn't like snap your fingers, voila, the world changed. Of course not. It's a slow burn. It's a stew, much like the most current revolution we are now in artificial intelligence. You know, the first concept of AI was probably envisioned 20, 30, 40 years ago. And just now, in 2025, are we starting to see larger shifts, because all technologies, they take time to have dramatic influences on culture. But the telegraph, going back to that, it was huge, because for the first time, information was traveling faster than its meaning. And what do I mean by that? Postman says this, quote, "The abundant flow of information had very little or nothing to do with those to whom it was addressed, with any social or intellectual context in which their lives were embedded." So, right, let's make the telegraph moment really felt. Like, what would it have been like to live in a world where there was no TV, there was no radio, there was nothing out there except people read. They read newspapers, they read pamphlets, they read books, and that was the form of discourse that dominated. But pause a moment and go back to the 1830s, 1840s. So you're living in a small town in Ohio. Your news usually comes from three places. One, maybe the local newspaper. Two, what people would say in church. And three, whatever could get to your town as it was riding in on a horse. And then one day, an editor runs a line of type electronically through a telegraph, and it says, "War rumored in Texas, details unclear." Now keep in mind you're living in Ohio in the 1800s, and you're like, Texas? I don't know anybody in Texas. I don't sell anything to Texas. My crops don't depend on Texas. My kids aren't in Texas. But now you know about Texas instantly. You know a fact about Texas. There's a rumor of a war in Texas. That's the telegraph. And for the first time in human history, information arrived without any relationship to you. It arrived without any context, without local meaning, without any way for you to act on it in any way, shape, or form. And Postman's point in the book is this: people weren't sitting around in 1843 begging, "Oh, please, please, give me more faraway, unactionable facts from Texas." No, that wasn't what was going on. The telegraph, though, that medium that we've been talking about in this series, created an appetite. So now the newspaper can print all kinds of things. Your local newspaper: flooding in New Orleans, fire in Baltimore, railway accident in Boston, political intrigue in Washington. And for people who live 600 miles away from any of these events, and they're never going to go there, that's the beginning of information as spectacle. You read it because, not because you need it, but because it's interesting. And once editors realized people would read interesting but totally irrelevant information or news about their given life, they started pumping more of it and more of it through the wire. So a day in 1850 could look like this: British envoy shot in Istanbul, Turkey. Locust swarms in Kansas territory. Comet visible over Paris. 3 different continents, 3 different realities, none of them touching your actual life in any way, shape, or form. And that's the precursor to your modern news feed. It's the 19th century version of volcano in Iceland, celebrity divorce, stock market jitters, cat playing piano. All of it true, none of it yours. So when Postman says the abundant flow of information had very little or nothing to do with those to whom it was addressed, he's saying that the telegraph taught us to care about things we could not understand, and we could not change them. That's the birth of a peekaboo world. Now you see it, now it's gone. Next story. And once you train society to want news without context, it's not a big leap to opinions without knowledge and anger without memory. Think about your own feed. You wake up, open your phone, headline 1, massive wildfire sweeps through the West. You feel a flicker of concern. Maybe you roll for pictures. Without 10 seconds, your thumb moves again. Headline 2, dog rides a Roomba wearing sunglasses. You chuckle. Maybe tag a friend. Headline 3, breaking, global markets tumble on economic fears. You tense up for a moment until the next clip loads, a celebrity crying on a podcast about a breakup. By the time you take your next sip of coffee, you've been to 4 continents, 2 emotional extremes, and you don't remember a single detail about any of it. Each of these stories scream, "Look at me, it's so important, look at me, you have to see this," and then disappears into the algorithmic ether. We live in a permanent now. The past feels irrelevant. The future feels unimaginable. Yesterday's tragedy is today's meme. Tomorrow's crisis is already queued for autoplay. We consume the world in snapshots without sequence, without context, without consequence. And here's the quiet horror of it. The brain adapts, and it has adapted. Your brain has adapted, and so has mine. It learns to expect things to be very fragmented. It starts to crave novelty. It forgets how to follow an idea from the beginning to the end because we're not flexing those muscles in our brain. The human is so amazingly adept at coming into new circumstances and adapting to those circumstances. And in this case, it's very bad. So I just want to recap. As I want you to really get this, it's incredibly important to understand our society, but for you and me on a personal level, if and when you find yourself riddled with anxiety after watching the news or TV in general, that's what Postman meant when he said the telegraph and the photograph changed literally everything. This electronic communication. When the telegraph arrived, news from 1,000 miles away suddenly mattered to the people during that time, more than what happened down the street. It's such a unique quirk in the human brain. We love entertainment. We love to amuse ourselves to death. But let's go back again to that random person in Ohio, getting word that a war had broken out in Mexico. Heck, he might even hear about that story before he learns about a neighbor's barn being burned down, if he's at the different place, right place or wrong place at the right time. Information divorced from relevance is what we have. And that's the first seed of this peekaboo world that Postman talks about. I get it. It's not politically correct to not be stressed over wars and climate change and social unrest and Antifa in the streets and Trump ending democracy as we know it. Take either side of the political spectrum. Both sides of the media are disgustingly guilty of the same stuff. But the seeds of this divisive world were planted long before Donald Trump or Obama or whomever you hate these days. It was the telegraph. And then the photograph came along. Images without narratives and emotions, without explanation. You could see the starving child or the burning city, but not the systems, not the histories, not the nuance, the why behind the images. It was all just a peekaboo look that you couldn't do anything about, even if you would have wanted to do anything about it. Now you see it, now you don't. Fast forward to today. We didn't destroy the typographic mind. We've just drowned it in dopamine because we're way beyond just a telegraph or a photograph. We scroll, we react, we forget. We scroll, we like, we forward, we react, we forget. Until the rhythm itself feels normal and silence feels unbearable. That's the cost of the peekaboo world. A society of people who see everything, feel everything, but understand almost nothing. And that brings us to the last part of our episode here. And it's the age of show business, where everything becomes a performance. Politics is no longer policy, it's branding. News isn't information, it's entertainment. Even truth itself has to compete for attention. Americans no longer talk to each other. They entertain each other. They do not exchange ideas. They exchange images. Postman wrote that. And television, he said, doesn't extend literacy. It's literally an attack on literacy and the internet. It's finishing the job. In this economy, attention is currency. Whoever captures it controls it. The more distracted you are, the more predictable you become. I want to say that once again. The more distracted you are, the more predictable you become. The more predictable you are, the easier you are to sell, persuade, and pacify. And that's why every headline is emotional. Every clip is short. Every pause is filled. The silence that once birthed thought has been edited out of the show. But here's the good news. You can still reclaim your mind. And this freedom begins with attention. Attention is the gatekeeper of consciousness. Where your attention goes, your life will follow. And this is why I want you to read along with me as we take on these topics. One book a month. If you're trying to keep up, you can see, heck, it's only 5 to 10 pages a day. Even that is a challenge for us. It's a challenge for me. Or heck, just read a few times a week. Just read. Old school. Read from the book if you can. You know those actual words on a piece of paper? There's something about it. It slows you down. It calms your mind. It focuses your mind. I don't want to get all mystical and stuff, but yeah, it does work, and it does matter the medium you use to focus your mind. And so this next week, we move on again, chapters 7 through 9. Give it a shot. Pick it up right here. If this is your first episode, go back to the first one and start over and listen till you're caught up. Because the opposite of amusement isn't boredom. It's awareness. And I know me personally, I will never, ever watch a news broadcast the same again after reading this book. I mean, it has just opened my eyes so much. You can see it just right in front of your eyes. After you read this book, I swear you turn on your cable news channel. If you hate Fox or CNN or watch either one of them, it doesn't matter. I mean, what a circus show TV news, almost ashamed to even call it news anymore, has become. And you know, from this awareness, it's kind of a first act of freedom. With this freedom, you can then go about your life with a little less stress and anxiety. And I know at least I can. Postman ended chapter 6 with a warning. Each technology has an agenda of its own. It is a metaphor waiting to unfold. And when Postman says each technology has an agenda of its own, it's a metaphor waiting to unfold. What he's really trying to say is, you know, every new tool, every new technology that we bring into our lives, it can literally and does change how we think before we realize that how we think has changed. No technology is ever just neutral. The printing press didn't just let us make books, it taught us to think in lines, logic, and paragraphs. The television didn't just show us pictures, it taught us to expect entertainment will follow. And the smartphone, it teaches us that everything should happen instantaneously. So when he says each technology has an agenda, what he is saying is this: every new invention quietly reshapes what we believe is normal, important, or true, even if nobody planned it that way. Our job, your job, and my job is to notice that while it's unfolding in front of us, so we don't get swept away in the drama of the whole thing. So go back, read this book, analyze this thing. It's crazy how our mind has changed, and so many of us wonder why, and so many of us want to blame the cable news stations, big pharmaceutical, the politicians, the political parties. but our system of how we communicate underneath it all is not the same as it used to be. And it changed right in front of our eyes, and we didn't even really notice the impact it was having on our brain. So I think that probably covers it for today. And I want to thank you for listening to the end. If you're reading along again, next week we're going to move on to chapters 7 through 9. This is an amazing section where we'll show how this show business culture has devoured politics, religion, and education. And so if you've ever wondered or pondered or been frustrated with what's going on in politics, religion, and education in our world today, well, we're taking that on next week. But until then, think long thoughts and guard your mind from the noise. Hope you have a wonderful week.